Okay, so I've been meaning to do this video for a couple weeks now. So a couple weeks ago, Clay and I had the pleasure of doing a double feature where we watched Ringu and then we watched The Ring. I don't know why I'm rolling the R's there, but it's kind of fun to do. Anyways, we watched them both, watched them back to back, and I'm just going to say full spoilers for both films. What I want to do here is kind of give my overall thoughts on both movies. And because the remake is not a shot-for-shot remake. It's still essentially the same movie, but kind of does its own things. There's some changes. What I want to do is say overall thoughts, kind of give the basic plot of both movies, and after that, talk about Ringu and the things I think it does really well. And not necessarily that all of these things are better than the remake, and some of the things in the remake aren't necessarily better than the original. But here's some of the unique aspects of this movie that I really like, but the unique aspects I don't like. And then getting into the remake, here's the unique aspects I think are really cool, the ones that I don't like, and some of the ones where I'm not sure if I like this change or if I don't like this change. I'm kind of back and forth. So, getting into my overall thoughts, I loved both movies. I would easily recommend either of them. I would definitely recommend doing the double feature. They're very much more of a slow burn suspense kind of movie rather than a slasher where people are just dying constantly. Personally, I do prefer the original. I think the American movies are like 20 to 30 minutes longer. And in the moments where it was really doing its own thing, I could kind of tell. Some of them work. Other times you get like the horse scene, which goes on for way too long and adds nothing, and I think is just really stupid. Sadako is an iconic antagonist for a reason. I think she has this great design, she has this great presence. Even though you don't see her for very much of the film, she's simple, but very effective. So getting into the basic plot, which I'm pretty sure you already know what the setup of the movie is. You watch a curse tape, the phone rings, and then 7 days later, you end up dying. And you end up getting killed by this creepy ghost girl who comes out of the TV that kills you with her mind powers. So, the basic structure that both movies follow is it starts with a girl dies, and her aunt is this reporter who is investigating the killing. The aunt ends up going to the cabin where the girl and her friends were hanging out. They watch the tape. The reporter ends up watching the tape, and now she hears the voice saying that she's going to die. Which, a real quick thing, you never hear the voice in the Japanese film. In the American film, though, every time someone picks up the phone, you hear the 7 days. The reporter's estranged ex, who is the father of her son, gets involved to help in the case. In the Japanese film, it's because he's also a psychic that gets involved in, like, supernatural shit. In the American version, he's a guy that does stuff with videotapes, and that's why he gets involved. The reporter ends up making a copy of the videotape, which she gives to her ex, so he has a copy that he can watch and he can study. If you know how the movie ends, you know that's a really fucking important action. So the two of them do their investigating, and they find out about a woman with psychic powers. In the Japanese version, it's about Sadako's mother, and then through a little bit further, they learn about Sadako herself. In the American version, they just learn about Samara, which is the English or American version of Sadako. At some point, the reporter's son ends up watching the tape, and now he's cursed too. And both versions of the movie have this scene of the mom just, like, holding their son and crying, which is one of my... It's not my favorite. You can probably guess what my favorite scene of the movie is in both versions. It's not a surprise. But it's a scene I really like. I think it's very effective. They end up learning that Sadako/Samara was killed by getting thrown down into the well. So they return to the cabin, find the well, go into the well. The reporter is specifically in the well and, like, finds Samara/Sadako's hair in the water and find the body, and then the skin melts off and she turns into a bastard skelly. And honestly, I think it's a really cool effect in both versions. And then she's told by her ex that, yo, like, your 7-day deadline has passed. Because it is 7 days exactly. Like, if you watch that shit at midnight, you're getting fucked at midnight. If you watch it at 6:59 and 27 seconds, you're getting fucked at 6:59 and 27 seconds. They're like, hey, your 7-day deadline is passed. We did it. We survived. It's because we went into the well. It's because we investigated. We solved the murder, and we can give her spirit peace. We are okay, and we are safe. Then the next day, the ex gets killed because Sadako/Samara comes out of the TV anyways. Because what the reporter realizes at the end, us investigating and giving her a proper burial and whatnot, had nothing to do with why I survived. It's because I made a copy of the videotape. That is the only thing I did that he didn't do. So the Japanese version ends with the reporter driving to her father's house with the heavy implication that I'm making a copy for him to watch so he can die instead of my son. The American version ends with the reporter having her son make the videotape copy, and he's like, okay, so what happens to the next person who watches the tape? And she doesn't say anything. And that's the note that the movies end on. So, the things that I think both movies do right. Both of them have this growing sense of dread, where in your first couple days, the movie... Excuse me, it was like, as the first few days are going by, it's still like, okay, I'm doing the investigation, I got this, I got time, and then as the deadline is getting closer and closer and closer, you see Reiko/Rachel getting a lot more paranoid. Reiko in particular about like, no, my time is coming up. I have to do something. And I really like that. Both movies have this actual focus on the investigation and the backstory. While ultimately meaningless to their fate, I think is genuinely interesting shit. And it is something that I enjoy. The ending twist that, like I just said, all of this shit that you were doing was all for naught, because this isn't some misunderstood spirit that needs your pity and that needs to be respected. No, this is just pure hatred and vengeance against anyone and anything. It's kind of awesome and I love. And the fucking TV scene is so cool in both versions. Sadako's movement is so weird and wrong and inhuman. Like the way she walks, and when she gets out of the TV and she's on all fours and you see the way her fingers are like crawling across the tatami. She's so feral and it's awesome. And my understanding is the way they got the effect of her movement was the actress was moving backwards. I think she was kind of like shambling backwards. And they just reversed the footage, which is why it looks so weird and jerky, and that's awesome. And with Samara, sorry, just trying to actually read what I said. So the things I noticed about Samara is, as much as I said that Sadako is very feral in the way that she moves, Samara is very feral in terms of how aggressive she is. Because I noticed Sadako's kind of taking her time. Samara moves really fucking fast. There's also this one effect where she's just kind of standing there and then she teleports like really close to the guy. Like, oh, it's like a videotape skipping. Oh, fuck, that's really cool. It's so neat. And she has this extra thing where when she shows up, there's like when she's doing shit, water is involved because she drowned in the well. And I really like the additional thing with the water. I talked about the scene with the mom holding her kid after they watch the tape. I really like. Both movies have this scene where Reiko or Rachel will have a vision of Sadako or Samara who will like grab their wrist and then afterwards the wrist is bruised. I think it's really cool. I like that the tape is different in both versions of the movie. And I do think in the American version, it's a little too long. Like, by just that much. But I like that it's not just random bullshit. It is all relevant to the monster's backstory and the things that happened to her. Finding out's not gonna save you, but it's not just random bullshit, which is something I do appreciate. Yeah, like the one scene where the reporter finds the hair and then the body and then the skin melts. I like that in both versions. I think it's really cool. And I just love the ending. Not just the twist in the TV, but how uncomfortable the final scene is. Okay, Dad. I'm gonna need you to do a favor to save your grandson. Or, what happens to the next person who sees the tape? And no response, because what the fuck do you even say to that? Good shit throughout. So now, we're gonna get to, for me, my pros and cons of the original film. But hold up, I think Princess wants to go outside. Is that right, Princess? You're smiling. You want to go outside. Go on, kiddo. Enjoy it. Okay. So, the pros of Ringu, because I guess we're rolling the R's again. There's this one recurring sound effect throughout the film that's not in the American version. I don't remember the first time you hear it. I specifically remember it during the funeral, which is something I forgot. Like, there's a funeral for the girl who died in both versions of the movie. Where, when I heard it, my brain was just kind of like, it sounds like an echo. Like, it sounds like you dropped something, like, into a well, and you're now hearing the echo from inside the well. Oh, that makes a lot of sense, knowing where this movie is going. Oh, that might be on purpose. That's a really cool sound effect. The father of the child, I can't say husband, that's not quite the case. He's played by Hiroyuki Sanada, and he just fucking steals the show every time he's on screen. He's Ryuji, and I really like Ryuji. He is this Papa Wolf that is always a very active character. Like, I'm going to save my son, I'm going to save Reiko, I'm going to save myself, I'm going to get to the bottom of this. I really like this dude. So when people die in this movie, what happens is like Sadako like fucks up their brain, but it's like they see her and she uses her psychic powers, and then their faces like contort into this look of pure terror, and I like that image. I do like it more than in the American one, although I'll get to the American version, what they do with the bodies, because like it's a little much, but at the same time is really fucking cool. But I do like the simplicity of what's going on here. There's this scene that's not in the American version when they're at the cabin and they're trying to get to the bottom and they're trying to find Sadako's body, where they're getting the water out of the well because there's so much fucking water in here. And as they're doing it and as they're moving the water from the well, you just kind of get these transitions of like, okay, we still have a lot of time in the day to there's less time in the day. Now there's like no time left. And you just feel, again, that sense of dread and Reiko's desperation as her deadline is getting closer and closer and closer and closer. And it's probably one of the best scenes of the film. I think so. So one thing I really like about Sadako is that aside from the very last shot of her where you see her eye, you do not see any other part of her face. And you never hear her voice. It's one of those things that just makes her feel, to me, that much more inhuman and supernatural. It's like she's never humanized or personalized. She's just the monster. And I think that's really cool. And, the American version, that's not what they do there, for better or for worse. And again, just that shot of her eye and the way she looks at Ryuji, there is so much hatred and venom in that one look, and I think it's phenomenal. Let's see, some of the other stuff I wanted to say. There's this shot, I don't remember if this is an early scene with Reiko, or if this is that first scene in the movie with the girl who dies, but there's a bit, I think it's after Reiko, I think it's after Reiko first watches the tape, and you can see Sadako's reflection in the television. She's not actually there behind her, but it's so fucking cool. And speaking of that, any other time when Reiko watches the tape, like when her son sees it or when she's with Ryuji, when he sees it for the first time, you get because of when the tape ends, you just see the well. And the next time there's a hand. And then the next time there's two hands. Like every time she watches the tape, the more time that passes, the closer Sadako is getting to her. And I fucking love that so much. I think there's a really good sense of pace throughout the movie. Like, each day lasts for a pretty decent amount of time. I'm going to quote exactly what I wrote in my notes here. Quote, ends on a fat beat. If you've ever heard the credit music to Ringu, it isn't like this very somber tone or this kind of melancholic or ambient tone. It goes really hard for no reason, and I was so shocked. I was like, I did not expect something I could shake my ass to at the end of fucking Ring, but alright, this is a bop. The last thing I have to say is, yeah, the flashback when you actually see Sadako for the first time and she kills that dude, I think it's actually really cool. That's also the scene with the bruised wrist, I believe. Those are my pros. Those are the things that, like, the unique elements of the movie that I think it does really well. I only have one con for this version of it, and it's that after the first few days, Reiko becomes a very passive character. There's still, like, a couple things that she'll do or come up with, but it feels like once Ryuji really gets involved, he is the one kind of making everything happen. And I get it, Reiko is feeling very stressed, understandably so. But I'm like, man, I just kind of wish she was contributing a bit more to trying to save her own life, you know? But that was just me. So those are my thoughts on Ringu. Now we get to the Ring. And again, kind of like, I didn't say this for the previous movie, but these are not in order. It's just kind of as I wrote my notes down. We got a lot of pros here. We're also going to have some more cons than some shit that I wasn't sure about. So there's this scene there's a couple scenes with Samara's dad that I want to bring up. Number one is Rachel is in his house watching the videotapes of her therapy. And in that, we'll get to those. And there's this one shot where it cuts back to Rachel watching it, and the dad is just behind her, watching her watch the tapes. It's such a creepy shot. There's a shot like this in Song of Saya. I don't remember the full context of it, but it's so fucking creepy. I love shit like that. Also, the scene where the dad commits suicide, I think is a really, like, good, creepy, uncomfortable scene. I think it's great. I mentioned this earlier, Samara and the water, that it's just this kind of recurring effect with her that when she shows up, she gets wet. But no, I think it's just a really neat thing. When it comes to the victims, so at first I didn't love it because they look almost kind of zombie-ish. Like, I don't know. I just like the look of pure horror. But something I was reading is that while it seems that this wasn't intentional, apparently the way the victims are done is very similar to how people look after they've drowned. And given that's what happened to Samara and her water motif, I'm like, okay, that's actually super fitting and really cool. So I came around to how they were doing the victims a lot more. I'm just saying, Rachel is a lot more active than Reiko is. Like, she is always investigating. She is always like, I am trying to save myself and my son. It's Noah, who's this version of Ryuji. He's the one that's a bit more passive, although he does still help quite a bit. There's this one bit where you see Samara's room in the barn with the horses. I'm gonna get to this stupid fucking horse scene. But I kind of liked it. That it's, there's a big ass ladder. Like, she's very isolated and separated from everyone. I don't know. It was just this, like, really cool, like, little set that I liked. There wasn't much to it. It was pretty simple, but I liked it. Similarly, with Samara, they talked to this woman that knew the family. And she mentions, I don't remember exactly how she phrased it at first, But essentially what she ended up saying was, here's the thing. That little girl was creepy as hell. And when she was around, things were not good. Then she disappeared. And things got a lot better. And when you live in a small, kind of isolated area, and the problem goes away, you learn not to question what happened to the problem. And I liked that. Like, it was one of those, like, that's kind of understandable, but is just so unsettling and creepy at the same time. There's this one bit with Samara as you're watching her therapy sessions, where they're kind of talking about, like, her powers and the shit that she does to people. And the therapist brings up, he's like, well, you don't want to hurt people. And then Samara says, but I do. And I find that line of dialogue really interesting because I'm not sure how to interpret it. There's the part of me that's like, you don't want to hurt people, and she's saying, but I do. Like, I do it anyways. It doesn't matter that I don't want to hurt people because I can't control it. People are around me and bad shit happens to them, and I hate that. Or, you don't want to hurt people, but I do. Like, no, you're totally wrong. I love hurting people. I love the crazy shit I can do. I am the problem. Like, I don't know. Because one version is like the more sympathetic, tragic monster, which I like, but I don't think I like quite as much as the original film. Or it's the, no, I'm a piece of shit. What are you gonna do about it? They're like, I kind of like that. I think that's kind of fun. Also, when you start the movie and you get, like, the DreamWorks logo, they put the ring in it. I think it was, like, the ring was the moon, and that was so fucking cool. Also, because we actually watched it... No, we didn't watch it on VHS. We watched it on DVD, but we saw it on a CRT. Like, during the, like, privacy warnings and shit, they kind of, like, fucked with it like a videotape, and I thought that was really cool. There's this neat little special feature where you can watch the tape in its entirety on the DVD. You have to, like, I think it's like you have to hold up on the menu, and then for, like, a few seconds, you can't control your remote. You get the tape, and as soon as it ends, a phone starts ringing, and I think that's really cool. I was so close to texting a friend of mine and being like, okay, dude, I'm gonna give you this number. And like, an hour, I was gonna try to time it and be like, at this point, call this number. Like, I was gonna try to, like, get Clay prank called. I was like, I'm not gonna do it. I don't think I should, but I thought about it. I was like, that would be so fucking perfect. Let's see, blah, 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 blah. Oh yeah, one thing I really liked in this movie is when you actually get to the cabin is just a piece of shit. Because in the other movie, it looks very nice. Like, this is an actual place that, like, people would go to, and there just happens to be a body buried underneath. This is a real decrepit piece of shit, and I kind of liked that. Another thing is there's these really beautiful shots of, like, the lighting in the cabin. It's like these streaks of red. I'm not describing it very well, but, like, it was visually really cool. So some of the people who have seen the video and are gonna get killed, you see them making these doodles. One of them I'll get to that I'm not sure I like, but they start doodling, like, a girl with the hair covering her eyes, and that I really liked. That I thought was a really neat touch. In the backstory, so in the original film, Sadako was killed by... She was killed by the professor that was investigating her mom, and it's kind of theorized by the characters that this might have been Sadako's dad, or potentially her dad was, like, a demon, but this guy, like, loved her mom or something. And then here's, like, no, it's the mom that took care of her. And I actually kind of liked that twist, or that change. There's this one scene when Rachel starts, like, gagging on something, and she pulls it out, and it looks like a stethoscope. I think it was some of the, like, testing equipment that they used on Samara. It's a really uncomfortable little moment, but I liked it. It reminds me of a scene from Brain Dead when I think the zombie mom is like eating the dog and is like choking on the fur. It's disgusting in that movie. It's great, but it's ugh. I talked about the bit with the dad lurking behind Rachel and how much of a creepy shot it is. The last thing I have to say is I love to make Chase as Samara, because I am used to her as, I know her as Lilo, and I know her as Chihiro, and so here is this like intentionally very creepy, awful child. It's just really funny for me, and not to say it's like, oh, she's doing a terrible job, it's funny. I'm like, no, she does it really well. It's like, huh. This is really interesting to me. So there's that. So in terms of the cons, I don't like the lighting in the movie. Like, there's this blue tint to most of it, and I just don't care for it. I don't know. It feels like it's a little extra, you know? During the final scene, like during the TV scene with Samara, while it's going on, it's also being interrupted by Rachel, like, racing over to Noah's place. So you've got, like, Samara crawling out of the TV, and then it cuts to Rachel in traffic, like, pick up the phone, Noah, and then it goes back to the scene. I just don't like that. Like, no. This is the best part of the movie. Let it play out. The original knew, let's play this scene out in its entirety. Like, I don't love that. I think the pacing of the movie is kind of off, because the first few days go by so fast, and then the next couple days are so slow, where I really liked how methodical the original film felt in terms of its pacing. Alright, so let me talk about these two really fucking stupid scenes. So, I think it's because Samara had a place in the barn, and she was around the horses. She has this, like, weird connection with horses where they're, like, scared of her and will kill themselves or some shit. There is this goofy-ass scene on a ferry. Like a boat, not a pixie. But they're on a ferry, and there's a horse there. And I guess because Rachel is cursed, it starts freaking out because it feels Samara's presence. And it breaks out of its trailer, starts running around the boat, and then jumps off the boat into the water where it gets killed by the propeller. It adds nothing to the film. This whole horse thing is like, this didn't do anything. This is just padding in a movie that doesn't need it. But the part that kills me is as the horse is desperate to get out of the movie, which is a good movie, by the way, but is so desperate to get out of the movie, as it's jumping, its foot, like, bangs on the edge of the boat. And Clay and I were howling with laughter. Like, that little bit was so fucking funny. I don't know why it was there. The other thing that I don't know why it's there is, like I said, Samara's got her, like, water effect. She got her water bending. And I think it's really neat. However, at the end of the movie, not the scene where she's, like, gonna kill Noah. It's when they're at the well. She starts doing some stupid Final Destination shit. We're like, okay, so the water is, like, rotting the floorboards, and the screws are coming out of the floorboards, so the floorboards, like, tilt, and the TV, because she's possessing the TV, falls and slides down the floorboard, and then it hits Rachel into the well, and somehow she's fine after this impact. It was so fucking stupid. Because what the movie does well, what both do well, it's that feeling of the suspense and the dread. So, having this over-the-top shit doesn't work. It's awesome in Final Destination, because that's what Final Destination's about. You watch Final Destination for the mousetrap, insane-ass death scenes. Why is that here, man? It doesn't work. So let me end with talking about some of the stuff that I'm just not sure about. One of them is Noah. It's not that I dislike him, I'm just like, I think in a vacuum, I like him just fine. But after just watching Ryuji, and like I said, like how much of a Papa Wolf he is, how dedicated he is to saving his family, it's not that Noah isn't, but how kind of low-key he is throughout the whole thing. I didn't enjoy him nearly as much, but I don't think it's necessarily a con either. And like I said, there's those bits of people doodling and, like, drawing the hair, which I think is cool. But then there's a scene with the son, I think his name was Aiden, like, drawing the well, which is, you know, the ring itself, and I don't know, like, he just keeps drawing it and drawing it and drawing it, and for whatever reason, I was like, I don't know, if he had done it, like, once, it might have been kind of interesting. For whatever reason, just seeing it, like, him surrounded by all these drawings, was like, this is kind of cool, but it's a bit much at the same time. Like, I don't know. And my number one thing there, I'm like, I'm not sure, is Samara. Again, the water shit is cool. I think DeVay chases really well. But that, do I like how much I know about her? Because like I said, with Sadako, you never hear her voice, and you barely see her face. You only see the one eye right as she goes for the kill. With Samara, you see her face, you hear her talk, there's, like, dialogue you can interpret. And on the one hand, I'm like, no, I like that. You know, it fleshes her out a little bit more, it humanizes her a little bit. But on the other hand, I'm like, I kind of like that Sadako isn't humanized. That there's so much of her that you just don't know about or understand. I prefer that. I like 100%, I prefer that either way. I think I lean more towards, like, it's fine what they do with Samara. I just don't like it as much as the original, but I don't... It works enough for what it's trying to do, but I think the original does it better. So, that's my video on these movies. Like I said, I liked them both quite a bit. I don't think I'm gonna go out of my way to watch any of the, like, sequels and prequels and all that shit. Maybe, but genuinely, I feel pretty happy with the two of these.